When you look back at what the expansion teams have done for this league, there's some pretty damn good stories right now, isn't there?
Incredible stories, not just on the ice, but off the ice as well. You know, look at the support both Vegas and Seattle have. The TV numbers have been remarkable, and both teams have developed loyal fan bases, great traditions, and one of the criteria for expansion is, would having this franchise make the league stronger? And the answer for both of those franchises has been a resounding yes.
But you're in Nashville's story was a bit of a roller coaster early, but it really has become that as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, you know, it's interesting when you look at how competitive Vegas and Seattle have been. We learned the lesson that probably most sports league over time figure out. When you bring in an expansion team, if you don't give them a competitive team, what in any sport, the initial enthusiasm wears off after a couple of years, and maybe a decade out, they're competitive. We, because of the system we have, decided we want to bring in competitive teams. And that's what we've managed to do, which was a function of both the way we structured expansion and what a good job both of those organizations did setting themselves up.
Given the success of those two new teams, is expansion high on your radar right now? Further expansion?
No, it's not high on my radar at all. I know it's gotten a lot of attention that we're getting expressions of interest from Quebec City, Atlanta, Houston, Salt Lake City, but it's not something we're focused on. Yeah, I take calls and meetings, I listen, but it's not something we're pursuing. Certainly not now.
What would somebody have to say in order to spike your interest?
I'm not really sure. Okay. In other words, with all the things we're dealing with, and with as strong a season as we've had, we would have to say, you know what, we need to focus on this. And at least at this point, that hasn't been the case. Maybe it's ownership expressing interest, but not getting deep enough. Maybe it's the need for a new arena somewhere. I mean, there are a variety of factors. If somebody came in and said, here's the whole package, up or down now, then I suppose we'd have to consider it. But again, it's not something in the list of things we're doing that says, you know what, we need to be doing this right now. It's just not.
Yeah.
One of the things that you have to be doing right now is finding a new owner for the Ottawa Senators. And
that doesn't seem to be a difficult task.
No.
The amount of interest being expressed.
Well, are you shocked by this? I need an honest answer, honestly.
No, I'm not. I'm very pleased. I actually think that our franchises are going to become increasingly more valuable than they even are now. And I think for some period of time, the perception has been that we've been undervalued. You know, there are 4 major sports leagues in North America. There's a limited number of franchises. We tell a pretty compelling story about our growth retroactively and prospectively. And I think when you come into this league, you know that we have a system that enables you, if you're well run, to be competitive. The game that takes place on the ice is in great shape. Our first round of the playoffs have been phenomenal aesthetically and competitively. And so if you're interested in sports, you want to own a team. Why wouldn't you want to be a part of the NHL?
Yeah.
Has the timeline surprised you, Gary, or is this exactly where you thought it would play out?
No, well, you know, I'm not the one running the process. There's an investment banker in New York who's retained by Eugene Melnick's estate. I mean, he consults with me and I know what's going on. I think the timeline may be about right, maybe a little slower because of how many prospective bidders there are that have to do their due diligence. But it's great to see. And as important as anything else, it should tell all the fans in Ottawa that this franchise is going to have a very bright future right there in Ottawa. Maybe not Canada, maybe downtown, but the fact is that the nation's capital is generating a tremendous amount of interest for a prospective NHL owner, and I think that's good for everybody who has any interest in that franchise.
So how much discussion would you have with the Galliado Sports Group?
Basically updates in terms of timing and who's doing what. Sometimes whether or not the process is getting too much publicity, whether or not things are getting leaked that shouldn't be. But, it's day to day. I probably talk to him a couple of times a week where he gives me an update, or if he has a question about how maybe he should handle something, I'm there to help him. But he's the one who's handling the mechanics of the process, the bidding, the due diligence, and everything that's attendant to that.
I've got to ask you, the whole concept of reading about ownership groups in the newspaper. I see that Ryan Reynolds, there's lots of stories about Ryan Reynolds and the Brady Group, and reading today that Snoop Dogg did an interview about his potential purchase, and he's been on ESPN talking about it. Does that help the process, or what does that do to it?
I think if people want to express an interest, I'm good with that, saying, yeah, I want to be involved. The nuts and bolts of what's going on, who's bidding what, I don't think that helps the process. And a lot of it, I believe, is part of the negotiation, where maybe one group or another is trying to get a leg up or discourage other bidding. Who knows? But me, until something's done, the less publicity, the better.
Yeah, I was going to say, but this does look a little bit like a poker game.
Well, and I don't think that's the appropriate way for it to go down. And there's a lot being speculated about that is simply inaccurate. And on occasion, I'll make a phone call to suggest a correction as to why whatever the sourcing isn't something that should be listened to. But again, you guys know me both well enough. Until it's fully baked, it should be getting all this attention. But that's the world we live in. We accept it and we deal with it.
Do you care at all about celebrity involvement?
I think.
Go ahead.
No. I think it can be a plus for the franchise going forward, but the bids are going to have to stand on their own merit.
Yeah.
And the key of moving, you mentioned downtown. Where in your list of importance of an ownership group saying, yes, we're going to go downtown? They don't have an agreement to go downtown yet. They still have to negotiate that. So how important is that?
I think that's something the new owner has to explore. There are opportunities to go downtown to multiple sites, right, actually. And when somebody actually gets in there, looks under the hood, sees what the engine's like, they'll have to make a decision as to whether or not they think it's a good opportunity. At 10,000 feet, I think it's a good opportunity, but the devil, as they say, will be in the details. And it probably, viscerally, would be a good thing and a good opportunity for the team to be downtown. But there's nothing wrong with the building they're in now. It's just, based on population movement and shifts and where people are living, and, and millennials and Gen Zs, more downtown, less driving. It may be for the future that it is better off downtown, but it's not something that hard and fast you have to do it. I think that's going to really be up to the person who ultimately owns this club.
But the perception is that the sale of the Ottawa Senators is essentially a real estate deal that revolves around them. I mean, they are the key piece in that. You have to have that in order to get a new arena, which would have, who knows what kind of infrastructure around it. And they'd be the draw. But you're talking about $1 billion for the franchise, give or take. You're probably talking $4 or $5 billion or more in total expenditure for all the buildings that would surround a new arena. Do you get involved in that?
That's a big deal. To the extent we need to help in council and we're invited to, we do. The purchase of the team, excuse me, I don't view as a real estate play, because I think the team's valuable on its own. And in fact, anybody who ultimately winds up being the purchaser isn't going to have any guarantees on a real estate play. So there is a potential opportunity, but that isn't fixed. At the end of the day, though, we get asked a lot of questions, whether it's in Tempe, in Arizona, or it may turn out to be the case in Ottawa, in terms of what we think works well based on our experience around North America. I do believe a project which includes an arena and retail and restaurants and mixed use in terms of offices and residential can be a really exciting and attractive opportunity, not just for a sports team, but for the city in which you're building this type of project. It literally can transform an area and the way people function downtown. Just look at Edmonton.